Stay right there, guys. Did we lose someone just now? One, two, three. Yeah, we did. All right. So, the coordinators, I'm gonna stop your videos now. But you guys will be off screen. Okay. Hold on. We just want to make sure. Okay, great. I think we lost one of our guests. Who did we lose? We
We
lost
lost
Miss
the
Smith.
video for Miss Smith.
Yeah, out of Florida. All right, everyone. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Model Freedom Roundtable Webcast podcast. We're happy to have everyone here. And we have Miss Smith back, so that's great. So we can start with Miss Smith on. So my name is Wayne Shields. I will be tonight's moderator on our Model Freedom Roundtable. This is actually our fourth episode. We started, well, 4 months ago. The show takes place once a month, and we'd like to welcome all our show guests. I'd like to first start by introducing our two hosts for tonight, the two co-hosts. We have Pia Michelle. Pia Michelle, can you give the audience a quick introduction? Tell them who you are.
Hi, I'm Pia Mitchell. I am the Fashion Production and Marketing Coordinator with PLITZS.
Okay. And we have William Lyman. William, can you give a quick introduction to the audience?
Hi, everyone. I'm William. I'm a Public Relations and Digital Media Marketing Coordinator at PLITZS.
Thank you very much, William. Now, I'd like to introduce our guests for tonight. We have four guests with us tonight, and we're very honored to have them. These are four professional models that actually, although we have COVID going on here in the United States, and in New York, we had Fashion Week approximately 2 weeks ago. Our show actually took place on the 15th. We actually still went forward with a live show, although it was not open to the public. It was actually live streamed. These four lovely professional models here actually participated in our show. And, we're going to have a nice, relaxed roundtable talk with these young ladies for them to kind of give a little insight to both the public and our two hosts here, talking a little more detail about their experience as a model on our three topics that we have for tonight. First, we're going to go around the table. We have Monique Croft. Ms. Croft, can you give a quick introduction to the audience, if you could?
Hi there, my name is Tashona Monique Croft. I'm a freelance model. I started out being signed at an earlier age, but after college and learning a bit more about business, I decided to take my modeling career into my own hands, which I'll dive a little deeper into later because it definitely served me very well post-COVID and throughout COVID. So basically, I'm just a freelance model.
That's great. Thank you very much. We're happy to have you and to hear a little more about your background and experience. So thank you for joining us. And Ms. Croft is coming to us from Las Vegas. Are you still in Las Vegas
Yes.
currently?
I am still in Las Vegas. Yes, I'm a little bit more on the northwest side. I'm up near Summerlin, but still Vegas. Yeah.
All right, Vegas girl. Thank you very much. Now, next we have Alexandra Santiago. Ms. Santiago, if you could give a quick introduction to the audience, if you can.
Good night, everyone. My name is Alexandra Santiago, but I go by Alex. And I have about a year modeling. I'm based in Connecticut and Massachusetts, and I'm with an agency called Propel Models.
Okay, that's great. And you're here on the East Coast. So thank you for joining us today on our webcast podcast. Next, we have Miss Smith. Ashley Smith hails from Florida. Ms. Smith, can you give a quick introduction to our audience if you can? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, we're not getting your audio. You might have to turn the audio on your phone, I believe.
Is that better?
There you go. We lost, okay, there's your video. Okay. So yes, Ms. Smith, if you could give a quick introduction.
Sorry about that. So quick intro to me is I've been modeling for the last probably about 5 or 6 years seriously. I actually took COVID-19 to actually get more serious into the industry, just for the simple fact that a lot of things became virtual. So I definitely use that to my advantage, which I'll probably get into a little bit later. But as far as agencies go, I am with Lux Studio Models. I am with XLNT Models. I'm also with Michelle and Group Models out of Florida. I am also with Hannah Noel Models out of Tampa. But as much as I have these agencies behind me, I still like to go ahead and go hard myself. It's awesome to have them, but for me, that's my main thing, is really just trying to get my name and my face out there professionally, but as much as I can. So that's pretty much all I have.
No, you're actually doing the right thing. Usually that's the shortcoming of many people trying to get into modeling, is that they rely on one resource. So we're happy that you are taking the methods that you do, and we're pleased to have you tonight. Last but
Thank
not
you.
least, we have Janisha. You're welcome. We have Janisha Jones. Ms. Jones, if you could give the audience a quick introduction on yourself.
Hello, my name is Janasia Jones. I've been modeling since a little girl, but I haven't got serious until about a year ago, super serious until about a year ago when I moved down south. I'm signed to MTM right now, but I still do a lot of freelance work. And yeah, I've just been going really hard with modeling. I haven't let COVID stop me at all. I've been still doing everything that I possibly can to get to where I want to be as a model.
Great, great. Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you for taking the time. And I think you're in the
Thank you.
South, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. You're what state?
I'm in Durham, North Carolina, but I am from up north.
Oh, you're originally from North. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you here. And
Thank you.
now I'd like to turn the roundtable over to our two hosts, Pia Mitchell and William Wyman. Take it away, Pia. William.
Okay, so starting off, I would really love to ask Tashona a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a little feedback, Pia. You might have more than one device with audio on. So you might have either a cell phone with audio on. So you might want to kill that audio, probably from earlier today. We're having feedback. What we'll do, yeah, go ahead now.
Okay, so I had a
There you
question.
go.
Start off with Miss Tashona Croft. I was wondering what your favorite kinds of designs to wear. Just a very general question for you.
Well, I would say, being the Gemini that I am, I have two very different favorite styles. I love a good streamlined pant, a tailored jacket. It accentuates my stronger points. But then there's something about a funky designer with like a good dress that swishes and has movement, and they pour their life into it. I would love, ideally, to walk for Versace. Definitely right up my alley. Some Calvin Klein tailoring, that kind of, those kind of really get my heart pumping and makes me really excited to walk down the runway.
Thank you. I agree entirely. Those two brands are very great. Okay, how about another?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about COVID and how that's impacted you as a model in the past few months. I know it's been a very strenuous time for everyone, but I was wondering how specifically has Fashion Week, in your perspective, been impacted by COVID and the restrictions placed?
Well, specifically with regard to Fashion Week, coming from Las Vegas on the West Coast to enter into the state of New York, there were multiple forms. I had to take a COVID test, a quick 15-minute before I arrived at the hotel. I would say the most strenuous portion of this COVID, and again, with direct regard to Fashion Week, was just all the paperwork, all the extra things that made it more strenuous and stressful. For example, at the airport, making sure I had all my passes because I had to submit those to New York State.
We lost your audio, Ms. Croft. Ms. Croft, can you hear us? I'm not sure if she's hearing us, guys. Her connection might have went.
Back.
Hi, Ms. Croft.
Well,
Ms. Croft, can you hear us?
yeah.
We lost your signal for a moment. You were speaking, but we weren't hearing your audio.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you just reiterate the last maybe half of that dialogue after the question?
Yeah, so I was just explaining that being punctual, having that in your tool bag is very important. Being ahead of time just so that you can avoid the COVID situations you know will be present, especially with regard to travel. And like I was saying, I came from the West Coast, clear across to the East Coast. And the only strenuous part I experienced were the precautions from entering into a new state. But definitely being abreast of these things ahead of my travel helped. I put a lot of things into play the day that I got selected to walk for Fashion Week. That was inclusive of going on to New York State, finding out what their travel guidelines are, what I was allowed to bring beyond just, your water, etc. And I'm talking about your mask, at what points you can take them off, what forms, again,
Oh, we lost her audio. Can we type a message to Ms. Croft? Just let her know in chat that we lost her audio. So we're going to get back to Ms. Croft. So William, I'm going to turn it over to you with your next question.
Excellent. I have a question for Ms. Smith. I would love to know just what inspires you to model. It can also be a model you look up to.
Sure. So for me, honestly, I really look up to, I would have to say, Tyra Banks. I mean, she changed the game, honestly. If I'm being candid, she really changed the game for especially, minority women to actually be able to be prosperous in the industry. So for me, even as a child, I was always super thin. But I was never unhealthy. So I knew I needed to really find my way without being unhealthy. So I had to really find someone that I could look to as a guide that looked like me, that could make me feel like, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. So that's pretty much the main person that I looked at for motivation and for inspiration. And she definitely has opened up my eyes to a lot of different things. So I would definitely say that she is the main inspiration to me as a model, especially as a minority model as well.
Now, can you tell us how long ago you started modeling, if you could reiterate? I'm not sure if you mentioned that before or not.
Sure. It's actually been a while. It's been ever since I was a child. My first ever gig, I was about 6 years old, and I was actually placed in a history book. And so it started from a child. But to be honest, I did have a little bit of self-confidence issues as a girl growing up. I mean, who doesn't? But I never wanted to, again, make that be my main thing. So I really had to get through that. So I had to get through all of my self-esteem issues, confidence issues. And then I just really grasped this whole modeling thing, and I just held on to it for dear life.
Now,
a couple years ago, I want to say maybe.
Have you always been tall, or did you have a growth spurt? Like, how tall are you right now?
No, right now, without heels, I'm about 5'9", almost 5'10".
Okay. Ms. Croft, how tall are you? I'm just curious so the audience has an idea.
I am 5'9" flat.
Really? And Ms. Jones?
Yeah, and I hit
I'm sorry. Finish your thought. Ms.
Yeah,
Clark?
I actually hit a growth spurt, I would say, a little bit after my freshman year.
Oh, so you went through a growth spurt. Yeah, that's what I was
I
trying to
did.
get to with some, some people go through self-esteem issues and then they go through that spurt, kind of like ball players
Oh,
who experience that also, and it can help to boost your confidence.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
now, Miss
No, I
Jones, how?
definitely,
Oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No, I was just gonna just reinforce that I definitely was a smaller child,
Hmm.
always the smaller kid. And then right after I started high school, I just grew. I had the growing pains and everything. But yeah, don't let your height stop you. It's your tenacity. It's your talent. It's your self. It's your, your alignment, how you go
Self-confidence.
out and
Yeah.
fight business.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Croft. Now, Miss Jones, how tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
5'8". And now, did
Yes.
you experience a growth spurt, or you've always been a lanky kind of
I've
individual?
always been pretty long, and my dad is super tall, so I knew I was gonna be pretty tall. I was 5'2" at like 6th grade, and then just kept going up.
Okay. And Miss Santiago, what about you?
I'm actually on the shorter side. I'm 5'7". So booking New York Fashion Week was kind of a shock to me, but also a confidence booster. Um, this 5'7" is tall between my friends and I, but in the modeling world, it's shorter,
Yeah,
definitely.
I tell people all the time though that fashion has really evolved in the sense that it's become more inclusive. And as a brand, a company, our whole mantra is about being inclusive, about being diverse. So, that part of our mantra is diversity. It's our main mantra, by the way. So we often have designers that want petite models. One of our designers from Australia, believe it or not, she wanted a range of models. She wanted models as low as 5'3". So the opportunities are there if you're not 5'8" and up. So we always want people to be aware of that. But I thought it was important for the audience to have an idea of your stature with regards to your height. Now I'll turn it back over to William.
Yes, again with Miss Smith, I just want to ask, what does your day-to-day career with modeling look like in the COVID era, and how has that changed for you?
So to answer that question, so day to day, I'm actually a quality assurance manager for a blood plasma manufacturing company. But when I'm not doing that and I work 6 days a week, any free time that I have at all goes to strictly shooting. So I literally take any minute, any time that I have free time when I'm not working and helping people save their lives, I am shooting. So even if that means virtual shooting, or even if that means group shoots, but I have to wear my mask, I go to everything. I try to get my name out there as much as I can, and I just try to work as hard as I can, COVID or not COVID, honestly.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. So this segment is over now. We're going to go into our second segment. I'm going to turn this over now to Pia. Pia, you could lead us into our second segment.
Okay, so now we have a couple. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. So now I wanted to talk about a few questions about COVID and how that's really changed the way that we model today, and just the opportunities in getting hired during the pandemic. It's been very strange of a time for everyone. So I wanted to talk with Miss Alexandra Santiago and ask her, how has it been finding opportunities and getting hired during this pandemic?
Thank you. Surprisingly, I've been doing more modeling jobs during COVID than before. Um, that includes test shoots with photographers, collaborations. I did New York Fashion Week. And I've been staying active in the casting scene, sending casting videos for commercials, stuff like that. So it hasn't stopped me from pursuing my modeling passion, for sure.
Now I'm curious, Ms. Santiago, was our show the only show you did for Fashion Week? How many physical shows did you do during Fashion Week?
I only did PLITZS. I walked 4 shows that day.
Okay. Did you pursue more physical shows, even though they were very limited?
No, I only did the casting for the PLITZS shows.
Okay. And I'm just curious with the other models. Ms. Smith, what about you? Did you do other shows, physical shows, while you were here in New York for Fashion Week?
I didn't do any physical shows for Fashion Week, but I did definitely use it to my advantage going up to New York. So even during the time that we were not at the venue for the show, I booked shoots. I booked as many shoots. I tried to meet as many photographers, as many models as I possibly could. So I actually booked some gigs while I was in New York, but not for Fashion Week, but just gigs in general.
Okay. And what about you, Ms. Croft?
Yeah, I actually was there for a very short time. So my press was definitely to obviously get your marketing in, meet models, photographers, designers, makeup artists, etc. But I had work back home in Vegas the next day, so I had to fly back. So I came out specifically for the PLITZS Fashion New York Fashion Week.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Jones, what about you? While you were in New York, did you do any other physical shows or any other activities to kind of leverage the fact that you were here physically?
No, I only did the PLITZS fashion show because I left right after the show back home. So I only had time to do just the show. I came the very day before and then left right after.
Okay. Now, was this your first Fashion Week show in New York or no?
I did one in around Valentine's Day, around that fashion week, and that was just this past Valentine's Day. It was like a fashion week, but not technically New York Fashion Week, but it was during around that time. It was like the week after New York Fashion Week.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Pia. Pia?
Hi, thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. So, I guess another great question to ask, and it sounds like all of you models have been very optimistic about being able to really work on your career, your craft, and continue to pursue it. I guess another great question, and we'll start with Miss Santiago again. Has COVID made you second guess any aspects of your career?
That's a great question. I don't think it has. I saw that someone asked a question about like shooting outside if we feel more comfortable than shooting inside. That's something I've been doing a lot. I haven't been shooting in studios as much as before. I've been shooting more outside. So I've just been more selective of the jobs that I choose to do, but it hasn't made me second guess if I should continue doing this.
Now, are you usually very busy with your fashion career, Ms. Santiago? I know that you're with one of the agencies we use from Connecticut. Are you normally very busy, or are you working with only one agency or multiple? Give us a little insight on what your normal, outside of COVID, what your normal fashion career is like.
I'm only with one agency, Propel Models in Connecticut, and I do mostly shoots. New York Fashion Week was my first experience over here in the States, I should say, because I used to model back in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico and then moved here. And I did do Fashion Week back there, but over here I've been focusing more on picture modeling, and I also try to balance my modeling with school. I'm a college student, so that those two things are what take up all of my time. So I'm pretty busy all the time.
It's funny you said Puerto Rico. We have quite a few models. We deal with a few agencies in Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, we had our virtual shows in the summer, and all 4 categories were won by the models from Puerto Rico. are female 5'8" and up, petite plus curve, male. So they they took all the positions that were available to be won during our virtual shows. So you have
I
pretty
was with G Models over there
G
by
models.
Gretchen Temple.
Okay, yeah, we deal with Juan Cologne, and we have a couple others there that we deal with too. Tiny World Models there in Puerto Rico. So thank you very much, William.
Yes, I have a question for Janisha. I would love to know what changes you would like to see the fashion industry implementing going forward in order to keep everyone safe and just adapting to new times.
Well,
The changes that I think that would definitely benefit us in the fashion world is definitely doing more things where it's a lot more spread out and we were able to keep social distancing. I think the way that we did the show, because that was my first work that I did during, everything that's going on with COVID. I think we did a great job with having to keep our masks on the whole time. Even some of the runways, how we had to wear masks as well. I thought that was a great idea. I didn't expect it at all. And hand sanitizing, things that we have to do in the real world, I think should definitely be enforced more in the fashion world, so that way we could continue to be safe with COVID and everything going on. I think testing is very great to do before the show for COVID and everything going on as well.
Now, do you anticipate that this will remain with us over the next year or two, or do you think things will kind of get back to normal pretty rapidly?
And that's something that I've been asking myself actually, but I think just because it's so heavily right now and it's so much going on right now, the safest thing to do is to act as if it's going to be here from a year or two from now, because you never know. And it's still going around and it could still easily be caught. So I think it's a great idea to still take the precautions that we have now later as well.
Yeah, we feel the same way here at PLITZS Fashion Marketing. We're actually
That's
planning for
great.
2021 in that same vein.
That is really good. That's great.
Okay. Pia?
Hi, so I agree completely as well. I do think that this is going to impact us for a long time, but I'm very interested in hearing from Miss Tashona Croft again. And I would like to ask what one thing he has learned while trying to model during this pandemic. So, Miss Croft?
so I would say the one main thing I have learned is that the game and the grind that I thought I had just got pushed to like 1,000. I have to be so much more punctual, so much more concerned with not only my own well-being, but the well-being of my fellow models, even more so. The set, I guess, just being more aware, being more prepared, and the grind is a bit more difficult in that, yes, things have become more virtual. But there is still the need for you to get on and do the research and like make your phone calls, your follow-ups. And it's made, I mean, the community is still there and supportive. I just kind of feel like the opportunities, you just have to be very careful about your brand and what you're taking, not just because everything is online. Because with COVID, I have found that a lot of outside modeling opportunities have kind of come out, but they may not be the best. So doing your research, being prepared, probably my top two items, I would say, just to have just got increased.
Actually, I'm glad that you brought that up. I try to tell models from a producer standpoint, us as a production company that produce our shows here in New York, that actually the opportunities, I feel things are going to get contracted. It's going to be less. It's always been tough in fashion when it comes to modeling because, to be quite frank, there's always, especially like Fashion Week here in New York, there's always way more models than there are opportunities, right? So, it's always a matter of trying to get the best people. You try to give as much opportunities as you can, but there's just so many models. It's like overwhelming. But I think with the COVID situation, what's happening now is that there are less opportunities. obviously. So I know that there are more virtual things that are happening. We actually made a virtual pivot early on in the pandemic, in the sense that we started doing virtual shows also with our Mall of the Year shows. And we're also going to do some too with Fashion Week, along with having the physical non-public shows. But I try to tell models that similar to echo what Ms. Croft just mentioned, just being more due diligent with regards to doing more pre-screening to make sure that what they're doing is a good co-branding opportunity. So she hit a really excellent point with that, because you need to be able as a model to leverage these opportunities that you have to get bigger opportunities. So for example, you do PLITZS New York City Fashion Week. Yeah, I would love to see you doing a main IMG show in London, Paris, Milan, Shanghai, here in New York. So always be very careful what you co-brand it with and use it as leverage to get better opportunities. But understand that I think the landscape is going to get even more competitive, and you have to be more due diligent with regards to your search. So I totally agree with Ms. Croft. I'll hand it over to William.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Smith. I was just wondering what resources you are using for auditions and networking, because you mentioned earlier having that balance between letting the agency do work for you and kind of taking charge on your own and finding opportunities for modeling.
Honestly, it's really been social media. Social media has been the best thing during COVID for me, honestly. I'm noticing that I don't necessarily have to take every single project presented to me, but just like Ms. Croft said, you have to do your research. You do have to kind of know what you're getting into before. You don't just want to say yes to any and every project. You want to do your research. You want to make sure that it does coincide with what you have going on, your brand, and just making sure, of course, that just because you may have agencies working behind you, that's not the end-all, be-all. We live in an age of social media where we can literally use social media to help us build our brand, all at the same time as agencies working behind us to help us get the jobs that we do need and we do want.
Ms. Williams, you are preaching to the choir. I try to tell models this all the time, like, don't just sit back, because it's even with prior to COVID, it's difficult getting modeling jobs, whether it's print, editorial, Fashion Week runway, right? You really have to be proactive. And I think models in this day and age, with the advent of social media the past, I would say 15 years, you have the opportunity now to push yourself and get opportunities. A lot of agencies do their casting online through Instagram. A lot of agencies now, they try to save the cost of having to rent venues to do castings, and they do a lot of it now online. So there are a lot of ways for you as a model, as opposed to people from 20, 25, 30 years ago that were trying to model. They had to hook up with an agency, some PR company, to try to get opportunities. So, I think models in today's environment are in a much better position to propel their brand. So yes, I 1000% agree with you. Mr. Lyman? William?
Yes, are we beginning the third section?
Yes.
All right, I have a question for Janisha. I was wondering, what do you hope to work towards in your career? What shows or brands would you like to collaborate with in the future?
I'm so passionate about modeling. I honestly want to just go for, I have so many dreams when it comes to modeling. I want to work with Gucci. I want to work with Versace. I want to work with Dior and everything. I want to do everything possible. I want to travel. I want to meet people and make connections. There's so many things that I want to do in my hometown, and I have a dental career that I'm pursuing as well. So there's so many things that I want to use for modeling and go even further from modeling way out. I just want to do so much for modeling, but big shows as far as, brands in Paris and Milan, I want to do it all, everything I want to do.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Definitely always have high aspirations. I tell everyone, don't let
Yes,
anyone hold you back from your aspiration. You don't want to be that old person, saying I coulda. I worked with so many people over my lifetime at corporate jobs that I used to work prior to having my own company. And you would hear older people saying, oh, I could have been a model. I could have done this. I could have done that. And I was like, oh God, I never want to be
coulda,
that
shoulda,
person.
woulda.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? It's better,
Yes,
they have the saying, it's better to have loved than never loved at all, right? And get your heart broken.
exactly. Yes,
So at
exactly.
least if you know that you gave your best effort, you know that at least you try to put your foot in there and go forward. So you have the
Right.
right attitude.
Thank you.
Pia, we'll turn it over to you for the next question.
So, on the topic of getting more experience within the industry, I would love to hear from Miss Alexandra Santiago on what a model can do to get into a Fashion Week show.
So, what I did was I auditioned through my agency. Actually, I sent my agent a video of me walking, my pictures, and she sent them. And then the other morning, I woke up with an email saying I got it. But I think it's very important to never stop practicing your walk. Not only your walk, but your posing at the end of the runway, your face. It's very important to always, always, always keep practicing and perfecting your craft, because as you grow, as you change, your craft will also change. And so I think practice is essential.
Ms.
And
Santiago, yeah, I love to hear what all you models are. I'm so happy I had 4 of you as guests today. The 4 of you are just talking. I feel like I'm in model church or something like that. You know what I mean? Ms. Santiago, what you're saying is so on the mark. Again, as a show producer, you can ask my team. We audition every weekend throughout the year, every weekend, right? We do our auditions strictly virtual now, by the way, since COVID. But one of the things that I always try to talk to models about, and I think it's ironic that you're from Puerto Rico too, because I find that models here in the New York area, I'm just talking from my experience here in New York, when they're local, they kind of take it for granted that they're here at a fashion capital, right? So there are tons of agencies, opportunities, and they take it for granted. And what I mean by that is that they don't try to hone their craft. And I'm generalizing to make a point. I'm obviously not saying every soul, but I see it so often because we audition all the time. Um, there are people that just walk off the street and they want to be able to walk for one of our design brand clients, right? And then they're offended when you tell them that they need training. Like, you don't have to train with us, but you need to train. You need to learn how to walk at a fashion industry standard level and learn how to present garments. Instead, we have people auditioning and they think it's about them. They're twirling around, they're doing all kind of crazy stuff. And what I love about models that are usually outside of New York, I'll say, is that they usually come from areas that don't have as many opportunities. So they put in more work into the craft and trying to hone the craft. They take it, and I'm just talking very frankly, they take it more seriously, I feel, right? This is why you see a lot of the big agencies, the big boutique agencies, the big brand agencies, the Ford, the IMGs, the elites. They're very, very, very careful and selective about who they're going to work with, who they'll take on to represent their agency. They're not looking to damage their brand. And so I tell models, the first thing you should always do is respect the craft. But I think the fashion industry has opened up so much. It's afforded a lot of opportunities. And I think people that normally would not get opportunities now have the opportunity to try to pursue it, which is great, but you can't disrespect the craft. It's like trying to be a brain surgeon, but you don't want to go to medical school. You want to like look at YouTube and then say you're a brain surgeon, right? So it's the same thing with modeling, not as difficult, obviously, but you have to practice and you have to keep practicing. So it's like when we tell people like, hey, you need to do some runway training. Oh, why do I, my boyfriend or my girlfriend told me or my family told me I model great. And I'm saying it's great for them, but professionally, industry wise, it's just not up to par. So people can't come to terms with that. So they have to learn how to separate, what maybe people are telling them to feel good and what the facts are with regards to how they're performing. So I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to pass the next one over to William. William?
Yes, I had a question for Miss Smith, but it seems like her video may have disconnected. So I will ask Janisha, how was your experience during Fashion Week? What was that day like for you, the preparation leading up to it?
My experience during fashion week was amazing. I thought it was a great experience, but every time I'm doing anything with modeling, I see the better side of me come out. But everything up from waking up and having to get up early and prepping and coming over really early, trying to find where the door was because I couldn't find it for the life of me. Everything, no matter how frustrating it was, everything was like just great for me. Just the experience was great. And I love coming to New York because I love how diverse it is and meeting new people and personalities and new faces. There's times where I would just sit back and observe and just watch everybody and just look at everybody, what everybody is doing and everything, just because it's such, it's great to be around so many people that take the same interest as you, very similar as you, but at the same time, very, very different. It was all just a great experience. It was a learning experience with COVID going on, but definitely a blessing, in my opinion. Great.
All right, thank you very much, Janisha. Our next question.
I have a question for Miss Tashona Croft. Okay, so I was wondering if you had one or two favorite moments or experiences while you were doing Fashion Week.
Gosh, the whole experience was so memorable. I got to network on different levels. My modeling, I created my own business as well. So I have an online boutique. So I got to network utilizing just the people. I don't know, kind of touching on what Janisha was saying, like just being around like-minded people with that energy, vibing on the same level you are. It was like just a transmission of buzz and excitement, and we were all just feeding off of each other. But by far, my most exciting moment was walking for a specific designer, Queen Toussaint. She had this beautiful, so much up my like fashion desires, a Cardi B bodysuit with this shiny puffer jacket. It was bright red. It said Queen. So just feeling the energy of that walking down the runway. It had the mask and everything. It was just like Invasion of Privacy, the video with Cardi B. And so, I mean, the music was going. And even though we were in a COVID situation where we had minimized crowds and spectators, there was just nothing around me. I was just floating down the runway, feeling that vibe. And it was really neat to feel it during New York Fashion Week because it was my first New York Fashion Week walk. And so I was just ecstatic. But just the overall memory, the people that I met, it was all just very exciting and extremely memorable.
No, that's great. That's great. We're happy we were able to help facilitate that experience for you.
Thank you.
So definitely, it's great to hear that. Our next question. I think William.
Yes, I have a question for Janisha. What lessons do you feel you've learned from modeling?
From modeling in general or modeling from COVID?
In your experience modeling in general, that can include COVID, of course, as it has become such a big deal.
Modeling in general, the things that I've learned, especially this year of me getting serious, I've learned that there's always more growth. No matter how much you think that you know, there's always more that you can know. You never can learn too much. I've also learned that no is not always bad. Everybody has a specific way of doing things and a specific way or look that they're going for. And just because you get told no doesn't mean that you're not worth it, doesn't mean that you're not good enough, and doesn't mean that you can't have an opportunity with that person later in the future. No doesn't mean something's wrong. And at first I used to get a little discouraged if I got told no. But now you couldn't never make me feel less than what I am because you told me no. And with COVID, I've learned that, just because there's not as much opportunities doesn't mean that you can't still pursue your goal and your passion for modeling, because that did discourage me in the beginning as well. And I'm an overthinker, so I overthink a lot of things. What ifs is always going through my head. I always have to, thankfully, I'm confident enough that I always bring myself out of it, that I wake myself up and don't let my discouragement take me to the point that I don't want to do it no more. So a lot of things, with modeling, you got to be really, really confident and really stay on your game. And it takes a lot of patience as well. Like, you got to be very patient with yourself. So that's a lot of things that I've learned from modeling. There's probably so much more that I can't even think of. Modeling taught me so much, but they're definitely the top things.
Those are great points, Ms. Jones, because I try to tell models, approach this as a business.
Yes.
And I deal with so many models where, to exactly your point, they get their feelings hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I've told models in the past, there's some models you can't tell them anything. They're overly confident, right? But you
Right.
have to know what your niche is, right? In the business of fashion, there's certain body types for certain things. It's just
Exactly.
can't get around that. Or a client might be looking for a certain aesthetic, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
as a model, you can't say to them, hey, this is what, I want you to
Yeah.
work with me, no one
Right.
else, Um, and it's the same for an agency. They have to provide the client with what they want, the aesthetic they're looking for. And it's ultimately the client's decision, by the way. I always try to tell
Exactly.
models that do not think your agency can force feed a client who they want. They can suggest, but the client ultimately, even if the agency love you to death, can say, no, we feel we're looking for something else. But you can't get your feelings hurt. Understand that it's business, it's not
Right.
personal,
Yes.
because so many people take it personally and they allow it to wreck their confidence. And they should
Exactly.
never do that. It's always business. And you'll actually go so much further. I think a couple of you mentioned this earlier too. You go so much further if you approach it that way, that it's business. Have a game plan,
Exactly.
lay it out, understand that people are making business decisions, that they're not attacking you personally,
Right.
per se. The fashion industry, and we have talked about it on previous webcasts here on Model Freedom, about the racial discrimination, sexism in fashion. It does exist. I'm not discounting it, but overall, you can't allow taking things personally damage you with your confidence. So great
Right.
points by you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Pia, our next question. We're in our last segment, by the way, so we can transition to that.
Okay, so moving on to our next topic of discussion. It's about setting yourself up for success. So I first have a question for Alexandra Santiago about, how should models deal with stress before or on show day?
The ways I deal with stress is music, definitely listening to music. I like to read too. I like to envision myself doing what I'm going to be doing. I like to put myself in the position before it actually happens, because then when it's going on for real, I don't get as nervous because I've done it before in my mind. So that's a helpful trick I've learned. And after the show, knowing that you did your best, being confident that you did your best, kind of taking from what Janisha was talking about, not comparing yourself to others is something I've learned that is very important. Different people have different ways of doing things, and that's very important to have into consideration. And finally, eating, getting food after a show is the best part.
Actually, before the show too, I try to really preach to models, please eat. We've had models unfortunately faint during fittings, shows, and it usually happened to our female models because, you know, guys, you're not going to stop guys from eating. They're going to eat, right? But oftentimes we have some females where they feel like because it's fashion and they're a model that they shouldn't eat, but it's the absolute worst thing you can do is to start a project or a job or a show and not eat. You're just courting disaster to get yourself hurt physically. So one of the things that we try to do sometimes is tell people like, hey, who had breakfast? Who ate? And if they didn't eat, we're like, hey, no matter what, go eat first, come back, we'll deal with everything after that. So great points. William?
Yes, I'd like to ask Janisha about the best practices when meeting with models or designers. How would you present yourself in a way that's going to lead to success?
Me, I present myself very, very confident, never arrogant, but very, outgoing. I like to leave my mark on people, definitely. I have a face that you won't forget, but I like my personality to very much shine through. And no matter if we work together or not, I want you to remember me forever. So I'm very kind and I'm very outgoing, very, playful. I like to interact with anybody, even if I don't know you. And I compliment people and stuff a lot, just showing people that I'm a good person and just make sure that they know who I am and will remember me over time. And then, right there is a connection for the future and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. Miss Pia? Pia?
Okay, hi. So I also have a question for Miss Tashona Croft, actually. It's about social media. So I was wondering, do you believe that social media impacts a model's success?
Gosh, yeah. It not only impacts a model's success, it impacts it in such a way that it can make your career or stall your career or end your career. Much like I was noting earlier, be careful with your brand alignment and where you want to go. For example, my next goals are the European circuit, Italy, France, London. So I really am not looking for, Playboy or Maxim or anything like that. So just being aware of like who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. I think that's a pretty major role as a model, is just to know yourself and keep with that all the way through and you'll be fine.
Well, now that you have Fashion Week on your resume, are you leveraging that for other opportunities for
I
London,
am.
Paris, Milan,
Absolutely.
to show them that you've done the New York scene, Fashion Week scene?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right when I got back to Vegas, I started to look for, first of all, what the big fashion shows were outside of Fashion Week for the European circuit. And there's so many. And Paris seems to be a really hot spot right now. I can also travel there with a bit more ease than some of the other countries because, well, Nevada has been kind of on a quarantine lockdown and for travel restrictions. So I'm considering all of those things. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I've been sending out my Z cards. I've updated all of them. I have an online version, I have a physical card. Emailing, searching, using really good search queries is important as well. And yeah, that just applying, putting my face out there. And now that I have New York Fashion Week under my belt, I have credibility and I can showcase my versatility. It made all the difference. So I'll definitely circle back and let you know how that all turns out.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. So great job. Next, William.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Smith. Earlier, you mentioned social media has been huge for you during the COVID era. What are some practices that models can undertake to put their best foot forward?
One of the biggest things that I can definitely say is keep your social media clean. If you can't keep it clean, just have a personal page that maybe is private, but you definitely want a business Instagram. That is the best thing that you can, that's one of the best pieces of advice that I could give other models, is to make sure that your Instagram or your social media remains clean. You don't want to get known for something that you might not necessarily take part in, but you have to remember it's social media. So you want to just be careful online. Things could get weird, but as long as you are committed and you are serious about your craft, I think you can navigate through social media without running into those hiccups along the way.
Oh God, Miss Smith, again, perfect. I preach this to models too as a show producer. We get so many inappropriate photos and we see so many inappropriate things. I try to preach to models that participate in our shows. Again, we're not a model or talent agency, but because we deal with such volume of models, we try to advise them as best we can. And one of the things we tell them is exactly to what you just stated. You need to keep separate your personal from your brand. Your brand and you personally should be autonomous, right? And it might seem like fun. Don't get me wrong. Hey, I did fun things when I was young that, maybe that I shouldn't have. We all have. But, if you know that you're trying to pursue this craft, just understand that not everything sexy is professional or going to be viewed the same. People can misinterpret. So you have to know what kind of brand, like I think who said it earlier, Miss Croft, are you trying to be a Maxim model? You know, are you trying to be a Playboy model? Are you trying to
There's
be an
nothing wrong with
industry
that.
commercial?
Just,
Say that
like,
again.
there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying
Oh
to
no,
like
no, I'm
know
not
that
saying
social
anything is
media
wrong with
is
it at
going to
all.
represent the lane you want to be in. And that's like you were
Right.
mentioning earlier, that's where a lot of agencies will go seek fresh talent. You want to put your best foot forward, even as you're sleeping at 3 a.m. Someone could be browsing, so just make sure that um, you should always have a voice and it should be your own voice, but just make sure you understand that the path that you're on and the lane that you want to be in requires you to have a social media that represents that.
Yeah, so definitely nothing against those type of brands and anyone that wants to pursue that lane, so to speak. I think though sometimes people misinterpret and they try to go, in this game, it's about trying to get attention. You guys know how social media is. So people try to up the ante when it comes to trying to get opportunities. Trust me, I see it all the time as a producer. They send us all kind of stuff, right? And what I try to explain, I'll give you a perfect example as an illustration. Sometimes you will have these photographers because we live in a technology age now where back in the day, to have a Hasselblad camera that cost 30 grand, it was very rare. High-end industry photographers had those. Now, any Joe Blow can get a camera that shoots better than those $30,000 cameras 20 years ago, right? So there are commercial things that are available now that put people on par with that. So with that said, you have a lot of people who call themselves quote unquote professional photographers or photographers, and there are a lot of people. And listen, if you're starting out and you don't have the budget, yeah, you want to do trade for shots, right? Test shoots, things like that. But I see a lot of these photographers sometimes, and they're great photographers out there too. People that are trying to get their portfolio built up too. But be careful of the ones that are always trying to get you to do editorial nudes. Even if they are legit editorial nudes, you have to say to yourself, is that what I want for my brand, right? Is that going to help the photographer more or is that helping me more? That's great in his portfolio, but once it's on the web, it's on the web, even if it's taken down right away. You can actually search a website's history and get what was there a year or years ago, right? So you don't want to put something out there that you weren't sure about, and then you end up having regrets, and it end up hurting you as a brand. Now, if that's something you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with it, there's a lot of big name models who have done that, and they were able to still pursue their career. So I'm not saying what I say is the gospel. I'm just trying to tell you, what I know professionally. And if you want to give yourself a better chance at pursuing a certain lane that you want to go in. Because listen, if you are with an agency and say, for example, um, an automobile company wants to use you in a commercial from when your agency sent you to a casting, listen, these companies do research. They're going to research you. All they got to do is go online and do, 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 do. And if they see nude photos coming up, garage open, and do you really think they want you co-branded with their brand? Heck no. So you have to think about these things, right? And I know sometimes being zealous and excited and being young, sometimes you don't really have the foresight to think about those things. So, guidance is important, but I think information is so abundant now outside of like this webcast podcast we're having here. You can easily do research online. It's not like back in the day where you had to go trek to a library, right? So information is there if you really want to research. So, I just want to say to everyone, we're towards the end of we're at the end of the show right now, but I really want to say to all our guest panelists today, it has been such a pleasure having all four of you on. I'm really, I know you were all confident and very knowledgeable about your experience and the fashion industry, but the answers you four have given today have been so on point. So I'm very grateful for that. And hopefully our audience is grateful for this information. For anyone that might have missed this webcast, we will be publishing it on our YouTube channel and our other social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook. I'd like to say to all our four guests, Ms. Croft out in Las Vegas, Ms. Santiago in Connecticut. It's Connecticut, correct?
Yeah.
Right. And Miss Smith out in Florida. Would like to thank you too. And Miss Jones
Thank you.
in North. Is it North or South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. We'd like to thank you too. We
Thank you
actually
so
did the
much.
first Fashion Week show in Charlotte, by the way.
What?
Charlotte Fashion Week. Yeah, one of my
Wow,
licensed
great.
partners did the very first one there years ago. Yeah.
That's what's up.
So it's been a pleasure, and I want to also thank our two co-hosts today. I'd like to thank Mr. William Lyman for co-hosting with us today, and Pia Mitchell for being our other co-hosts. And there are a couple people behind the scenes that you might not be seeing right now if you're watching this show. We have Matthew. He's handling one of our coordinating production of the show behind the scenes, and we also have Adina. She's also doing the coordination of producing the show behind the scenes. So we'd like to thank them for their assistance also. So COVID and all, I want to say thank you for doing our Fashion Week show. I want to wish all four models the very best in the pursuit of their career. We'd be very happy and honored to have you do another Fashion Week for us or participate in one of our virtual shows. It'll be an honor. And we definitely look forward to hearing big and great things from all four of you. And if you need any help from us with anything, referrals or anything like that, we'll be happy to give it to you. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you so much.
you're very welcome. I'd like to thank the audience that's watching us live on stream or on our Zoom webinar. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and we want to say, everyone, please remain safe, remain healthy, and we hope to hear and see everyone again soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much for being on.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.